Hi there, my name's Dr. Jessica Collins. I'm one of the Associate Trauma Trainers here at Epione Training and Consultancy. And today I'm going to be presenting on how we understand attachment and the role of relational repair in the work that we do with people who've experienced trauma. Now, attachment is a very broad topic, so there's so much that could be covered today. But I hope this video presents some of the foundations of what we understand about attachment and what it means for people who are trauma experienced, and why it's so important that we understand this and why we offer a different relational experience for the people that we work with who've experienced trauma. So let's begin by outlining what we mean by attachment. So attachment isn't just a bond between an infant and a caregiver. At its core, attachment is an evolutionary survival mechanism. Now, we know that human infants are born really neurologically immature. So there are other animals in the animal kingdom who are born relatively independent. But actually, as human babies, we really cannot meet our own needs when we're first born. We can't feed, we can barely move, and we certainly can't soothe our own needs. So innately, we recognise that we rely on adult caregivers to meet those needs for us and raise us until we're independent to do so ourselves, which takes a long time for humans to do. So nature equips us with a very powerful instinct to seek proximity to a trusted caregiver. And we know that in utero, babies can already recognise their mother's voice, so they're starting to get to know who those familiar, safe caregivers might be before they're even born. And we know that when most children are born, they're hardwired to seek interactions with those caregivers. So they'll seek out those familiar voices and scents and sounds of people that they know were present when they were in utero. And most children are born preferring to look towards faces rather than objects. So even when we've got really exciting, colourful toys and things, most babies will generally prefer to look towards faces. And that's because we know that those faces are likely to be where we can seek care from our caregivers. And as babies, we have pretty much one strategy to get our caregivers to meet our needs, and that's crying. So of course, as newborns, all we can really do is cry. As we get older, we have some other strategies that we can use. So babies might use things like pointing, facial expressions, and of course language as they get older to tell adults about their distress and about their needs. But as newborns, we very much rely on our caregiver, recognizing that we're crying and that means that we're demonstrating distress, attuning to our needs, so attuning to the fact that crying means distress, and parents and caregivers kind of attuning to what the child needs, responding to that distress, and therefore meeting those needs and soothing the baby. And this reciprocal relationship between the baby and the adult, this is the attachment. So it's the reciprocal relationship where baby demonstrates distress and caregiver attunes to that distress and meets their needs and soothes their distress. That is the attachment relationship. And through this process, the child learns more than just who to go to when they're hungry or tired. You know, that's a really important part of attachment. But they begin to develop an internal working model, a sort of map of who they are, who others are in the world, and what the world is like. And again, that's because babies don't have any other method to learn these things. They can only really learn this through their attachment relationship with their primary caregivers. So they learn about who they are, whether they're worthy of love and protection and care. They learn about their own needs and what it means to have needs, and whether those needs are acceptable to those around them, and how to get those needs met, and what others do in response to those needs. And therefore, whether other people around them, whether their caregivers are safe, responsive and loving caregivers. And I suppose they learn as well about the world, whether the world is a safe enough place. And actually over time, through repeated interactions with our parents, attuning to our needs and soothing our distress, we begin to learn that our emotions are tolerable, they're transient, and that they can be soothed, you know, that they don't last forever or they don't have to overwhelm us. And as we grow older and later on into our childhood, through our parents co-regulating with us, we can start to learn how to regulate our own emotions. This is how we begin to develop our own window of tolerance. So as you can see, there's a lot that we learn from our early experiences and through our attachment relationship. And this is partly why the first few years of life are considered so crucial in child development. So let's imagine how this process plays out then for children who experience good care, like good enough care, and for a child who experiences not good enough care. So in this diagram here on the left, we can see a child who is experiencing good enough care and within a secure attachment relationship. So in this example, the child experiences pain or discomfort and they demonstrate their distress through crying or other means to get a caregiver to come and soothe them. The parent attunes to this and appropriately attends to the child's needs and soothes their distress. And the child becomes calm. And through this, the child learns adaptive core beliefs about their self, others, and the world. So they learn that their needs are important, that they're worthy of love and care, and that if I demonstrate my needs, if I experience discomfort, I can demonstrate that through crying and other means. And that when I demonstrate my needs, others are going to come to help me. So others are there to help and care and love me. They learn that adults and caregivers around them are safe and that the world is a safe enough place. And of course, within this good enough attachment relationship on the left-hand side, there might be some instances of rupture. We're certainly not suggesting that this is about perfect parenting, because there aren't always cases where parents can offer quick, attuned care 100% of the time. But the key is just some general consistency and emotional attunement to the child's needs and some repair in those instances where that might be some degree of rupture. So an example might be that a parent is late to collect a child from nursery because there was loads of traffic on the way home or something. And the child might feel temporarily distressed by that parent wasn't there to meet their needs as they'd expected. But in the context of an otherwise loving relationship, this can be a relatively minor rupture that can be repaired. And actually, we know that as children, we begin to learn skills in tolerating our own distress through these opportunities to tolerate distress in the context of an otherwise loving, attuned relationship. And this child on the left, we can imagine growing up to be able to engage in positive relationships because they've learned positive relationships through their early interactions. And then on the diagram on the right-hand side, this is a child who's experiencing not good enough care, so not a good attachment relationship. So in this case, the child experiences distress and demonstrates their distress to their caregiver, but the caregiver doesn't attune to this and soothe it for them. So this might be that the parent is misattuned to the child's needs, so isn't able to recognise when they need soothing, or is unable to respond appropriately to those needs due to their own difficulties, or the parent might be absent entirely from the child's life. And because the child isn't soothed, their nervous system perceives this as a significant threat. So remembering that attachment is a survival mechanism because we need our parents to meet our needs to survive. Therefore, if my parent doesn't meet my needs, then this is a threat to my survival. So, of course, the amygdala, the internal threat detection system in our brain, sounds extremely loud at that point. We're in significant danger, and the nervous system becomes entirely overwhelmed with distress. And of course, from this, the child's internal working map of the world develops in a very different way. So this child would learn negative core beliefs about the self, that I'm not worth love and care, that I shouldn't bother demonstrating my distress, because if I do, perhaps I'm harmed if I demonstrate distress, or if I do, I'm neglected and nobody comes to meet my needs. So it's fruitless. There's no sense in crying because nobody comes to soothe me. Likely, this child would internalize a sense of shame. So this sense that my caregiver didn't meet my needs because I am not worthy of my needs being met. And of course, children are extremely egocentric. They're not able to consider those wider contextual factors that might mean that their parent isn't able to offer good enough care, something like mental health difficulties. The child can't see that. They can only see themselves, and they attribute this to their worth not being good enough. And likely this child is going to have to seek alternative methods to getting their needs met. And to keeping safe. So for some children, their nervous system might activate a fight response. So they see this sense that the child needs to protect themselves in a very dangerous world. And we might see this being demonstrated at home or school or even into their adult life. For other children, their nervous system might take more of a freeze, flop, fawn, shut down type approach where it's safest to just keep quiet, not demonstrate my needs through fear that if I do demonstrate my needs, I might be harmed in response. So it's better off to just keep quiet and shut down and hope that that's my safest route to survival. And of course, that means that it's very difficult for adults around the child to recognize their needs because then they stop demonstrating their needs. And of course, this child is likely to demonstrate core beliefs about adults as being harmful or unresponsive to their needs. It's really important for us to recognise as well how difficult it can be for children whose parents' responses are unpredictable. So parents who can sometimes offer loving, attuned care, but sometimes offer harm or neglectful care, or are entirely absent. And we might see this in situations where adults have fluctuating mental health difficulties or cases of substance use, or adults who are in very difficult situations themselves, such as domestic violence, where there are moments where they can offer that attuned care and moments where they can't for other reasons. And you can imagine for that child's brain trying to develop that internal working map of how I get my needs met, that's incredibly difficult. Where sometimes when I cry, I receive this loving, attuned care that I need. But sometimes when I cry, I'm harmed or neglected. And that means it can be very difficult for that child's brain to make sense of that. That can be very anxiety provoking for children because it's so unpredictable. And we can see how these two children's attachments impacts their sense of self and their sense of relationships with others, and can therefore impact their capacity to form and maintain positive relationships into their later childhood and adulthood. So I guess what we're learning here is that our early relationships become a kind of emotional blueprint that shape how we expect our relationships and how our future relationships play out, not just as children, but into our adulthood. So you might have worked with people who tell you things like, I just really struggle to trust people or let anybody in, or I always end up in unhealthy relationships. And actually, these patterns often make sense when we look at people's early attachment history. So if those people had learned early in life that people are unpredictable or unsafe, that your needs are too much, that you are not worth love and care or respect, and that closeness to others might lead to rejection, pain, or shame, then of course their nervous system is going to adapt to that and begin to anticipate that people and relationships are not safe to be in. So this might mean that later in life, people are expecting people to be unsafe and unkind. And even when people are safe and are kind to them, their internal blueprint and their amygdala might be firing that this is a threat and saying to them, don't trust other people, push them away before they hurt you. That closeness to others feels dangerous, I'm not able to risk that, and that actually I'm just better off managing everything alone. Or the opposite, we can also see people who feel so insecure in relationships and so anxious about that they could present in a very anxious way, so that, I need to keep people close at all costs. My needs are not worth being met, so I need to hold people as close so that they can't leave me, and I'll do anything to keep people around, which of course can leave people extremely vulnerable if they're willing to do anything to keep people close to them. And these relational patterns are not chosen by people. This is a learned strategy from their early attachment patterns, and it's a way that their nervous system has now adapted to survive in those emotionally unsafe conditions from their early childhood. And of course, what we know is people who are living with this blueprint for relationships might be more likely to have had repeated difficult relationships into their later childhood or early adulthood. So continuing to get into these really difficult relational experiences that reinforce those early core beliefs that they've developed from their life experiences. So their sense of self as somebody who is not worthy of love, care, and respect, or their sense that the world and others are a very dangerous, harmful place to be. And for people who've experienced abuse and neglect in their childhood or throughout their life, they're likely to be familiar with these dynamics that are presented on screen here. So dynamics that feel like threat, control, coercion, betrayal, and disempowerment. And as I was saying earlier, even safe relationships might feel extremely threatening because they're so unfamiliar, or people don't have that blueprint of how to interact in a positive, healthy way with those around them. And we know that this becomes quite a paradox for people, quite a vicious cycle for those who've experienced trauma, because we know that their experience of relationships is that relationships hurt me, which might make them avoid those relationships. But yet we know that relationships are the path to healing from trauma. So likely our clients are going to need those connections and need to seek connections as a pathway to healing, but haven't had the experiences of positive early relationships to draw on, and might fear getting close to others, or struggle to know how to get close to others, or others are struggling to know how to get close to them due to that different experience. And this is where our role becomes crucial. because every interaction that we have with our clients, even simple interactions like quick phone calls, is a chance for us to offer a new experience of relational safety and a new experience of being seen, respected, and understood. So we can offer that safe, attuned relationship that they might not have experienced before, to start to revise and update those old blueprints that their nervous system has developed in their early years. And I guess the way that we do this is through consistency, emotional presence, and a trusting relationship. So what does that look like in practice? I suppose the 5 principles that are presented on the right-hand side of the screen here are the foundation of offering trauma-informed, attachment-sensitive relational experiences for the people that we work with. So firstly, promoting safety in our interactions with others. And we know that our clients are going to need to feel emotionally and relationally safe with us before they're able to engage in change. So if we have a change-focused or a goal-focused piece of work that we're being asked to do with somebody, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to engage in that work before they feel emotionally and relationally safe with us. And this means us being predictable, attuned to their needs, validating of their needs before we try and engage in change techniques, and non-shaming of their needs and their experiences. Of course, we're going to promote choice in our interactions with people. We know that trauma often feels like involves a loss of control in some degree. So we can offer small, meaningful choices to help demonstrate to that person that they are worth having a choice and help them to rebuild their autonomy that they might have lost through their experiences of trauma. And similarly, collaboration, so not doing things to someone, but trying to do things with them in as much of degree that we can, which models that degree of mutual respect and repair. Promoting trust in our interactions, and we know that trust cannot be assumed. Trust from our clients is earned. And we can build that slowly by being consistent, honest, and boundaried in our interactions with clients. We know that sometimes we can't offer 100% consistency, or we can't always meet our clients' expectations. Something like as simple as we're off sick on a day where we're meant to see them, so we're not able to follow through with an appointment or a meeting that we planned, but being able to help clients be aware of that in advance, that there might be times when I'm off sick, and of course that can't be helped, but this is what we will do to make sure that your needs are met as soon as I'm feeling better. Just to offer that sense of boundaries around what I can offer, how I can meet those expectations, and being honest about that, to improve our sense of consistency to the most degree that we can do. And finally, of course, promoting empowerment, so helping people to reconnect with their strength and their power. Trauma is so disempowering for people, so helping them to empower them in their journey to recovery and in their care. And we know that for some people, this relational experience on the right-hand side, whilst we want to offer it, but it might feel completely alien and therefore quite threatening to our clients at first. So you might, if you offer this, you might notice some degree of friction or tension or resistance to this that can be quite unusual or difficult for us to understand. But we know that for people who are expecting dynamics on the left-hand side of the screen, that receiving dynamics on the right-hand side of the screen might feel just really uncomfortable, alien, and therefore really untrusting of those who offer this different relational experience. It might even remind people of times where they've been betrayed or exploited by others who sort of pretended to offer a safe, trusting, empowering space, but actually had ulterior motives that were very difficult for our clients, and harmful. So it's important that we offer patience and consistency with this, that not by offering this once is unlikely to, our clients are unlikely to be able to trust us immediately, but by offering this consistently, slowly and gradually, to give people the time to feel safe in this new, different dynamic. For example, if we're thinking about the item around promoting choice and collaboration, this might be completely alien to someone, and offering them too much choice might make them feel really paralysed or actually quite threatened by being offered total choice and control, because they've not had the opportunity to develop those skills, and they might not feel safe in their ability or their capability to make choices for themselves. So in a situation like this, it might be helpful at the beginning to scaffold the person in developing a sense of choice. So for example, rather than offering free reign of whatever they want, giving them some options that they can choose from. So this promotes that dynamic of choice and collaboration, but without totally overwhelming their brain and nervous system with something that feels so alien to them. And over time, they might be able to build confidence in being able to take on more choice and power in their own decision making. So in summary, we can offer clients an understanding of how their early experiences have meant that it's been really difficult for them in terms of their relational experiences, the challenges that they're experiencing in their relationships, often with themes around, fear of others, feeling that their needs are not met, and really difficult relational systems and dynamics. And we recognise that the systems that we work in can feel triggering of those difficult dynamics that they've experienced. So sometimes the processes that we have to do within our systems might feel really unsafe. They might feel like betrayal, or they might feel like quite controlling systems that we work within, and that might sort of trigger clients in terms of their early relational difficulties. So when we work with people who've experienced trauma, the question that we can hold in mind is, what does safety feel like for this person, and how can I offer a bit more of it in my interactions with them? And again, just trying to offer that new relational experience based on safety, choice, collaboration, trust, and empowerment. Thank you very much.